The Minnesota Timberwolves are in the middle of the deepest playoff run they've had in 2 decades. They just knocked out the defending NBA champions Denver Nuggets.
5, Edwards, Gordon is there. Backpedals, jab, shot. Oh, slammed in! Reed parachutes in and jackhammers it down.
But who is the mastermind behind this monster team? And how did he put the pieces together to take down the reigning champs? The Timberwolves are on a historic playoff run, led by their young star Anthony Edwards. They have surpassed all expectations, making it to the Western Conference Finals. But beating Denver was just the next step in the master plan. The man responsible for building the reigning champions, Denver Nuggets team, is also the one who built the team who just destroyed them. Somewhere deep underground at the Target Center, the genius responsible for knocking out the Nuggets is watching the next phase of his evil plan unfold. Who is this brilliant mad scientist? Let's dive in and find out. For years, basketball in Minnesota was dead as a doornail. The team won their only division title 20 years ago. 2004 was also their most successful season in franchise history. That year, Minnesota won 58 games, was the top seed in the West, and went all the way to the conference finals before falling to Kobe and the Lakers in 6 games. But after that run, Minnesota missed the playoffs for 14 straight years and didn't have another winning season until 2018, when they were bounced in the first round by the Rockets. Then, from 2019 to 2021, the team lapsed back into bad basketball. But 2 seasons ago, basketball's mad scientist arrived in Minneapolis, and he had only 2 goals in mind: build a team that can knock off the defending champs, and then go and do it. You've all seen the classic black and white Frankenstein horror movie. After the doctor stitches the body together, he uses the energy from a lightning strike to bring his creation to life.
It's alive!
Tim Connelly found that bolt of lightning for the Timberwolves. He's electrified Minnesota basketball and made his team one of the most dangerous in the NBA. And like a true mad scientist, Connelly thought outside the box when he began building the roster that is now on the doorstep of winning an NBA championship. He didn't rely on a cookie-cutter approach to building his team. While the rosters of many teams are built for small ball athleticism and long-range shooting, Connelly has attempted to buck the system. He landed the league's best defensive player, Rudy Gobert, thanks to a massive trade that sent 5 players and 5 draft picks to the Utah Jazz. After acquiring Gobert, Connelly kept another big man around in Naz Reid by signing him to an extension. Minnesota now has 3 quality big men in Gobert, Reid, and Karl Anthony Towns. This allows Minnesota head coach Chris Finch to rotate all 3 of them however he wants, without them missing a beat. Minnesota has 3 solid rim protectors and great defense in the paint. The Wolves have ridden their defense all the way to the edge of history, but there was a time not too long ago when people thought Minnesota was doomed to fail. This twin big lineup had the basketball experts scratching their heads at first, especially when Rudy Gobert struggled to get used to his role when he first arrived in Minnesota. But after the Timberwolves rolled in the regular season, locked down Phoenix in the first round of the playoffs, and outlasted Denver in the second round, the twin big system now looks like the work of a basketball genius. Other teams in the league might try to be copycats when building themselves up. Remember when several teams wanted to copy the Spurs? They used to be the model for how to build a team back in the day, since they've won 5 NBA championships. But Tim Connelly and the Timberwolves decided to toss that line of thinking out the window. They went their own way. In a high-scoring league dominated by fast-paced play, deep shooting, and teams stuffing the offensive stat sheet, Minnesota decided to do the opposite. While other teams hung their hats on making it rain from deep, the Wolves decided to hang their hat on championship-level defense. They were the NBA's top defensive team in the regular season. But even after Connelly traded for Gobert and Reid to strengthen Minnesota's defense, he was nowhere near finished building his team. The mad scientist continued his work. He knew he needed to keep stitching his creation together. Talent and youth can only take a team so far. The Timberwolves won 56 games in the regular season and earned the 3 seed in the West. But if they were only a young and talented team, they wouldn't have made it to where they are now. Along with size, youth, and proven talent, the Wolves also added another key piece to the puzzle: veteran leadership. This came in the form of Mike Conley. The 36-year-old point guard was acquired well before the Wolves started winning. But even though big buckets and key minutes from veteran players are important, Conley brought a dimension to the team that may not have been there before. He plays the position of point guard the way it was meant to be played.
Oh, crossover. Connelly. Oh, uses the contact to his advantage.
In simple terms, a point guard is like the basketball version of a quarterback. In football, a team's quarterback is supposed to run the offense effectively, keep things flowing, and put their team in the best position to win. Point guards do the same thing on hardwood by getting their teammates involved. They don't play hero ball and just jack up jumpers at the last second. They make the extra pass to the open teammate, dish the ball for a key assist on scoring plays, or create scoring plays for their teammates. Unless there's a wide open shot for them to take the ball and score, a team's point guard should be focused on how they can get their teammates involved.
That ball tapped over to Josh Hart. The kick out stolen. Connelly, 2-on-1, throws it behind him. Gobert to Noel. Great decision.
Mike Conley has done all these things so well that he's been named the NBA's Teammate of the Year, not just once, but twice. In an interview with USA Today, shortly after winning the award for the second time, Conley said that he embraces his role as a point guard. But every time Conley laces up his shoes, he goes out there each night with something much deeper than basketball on his mind.
What makes a good teammate?
I wish I knew all of that. I think the teammates could probably answer it better than I can. Honestly, it's probably just being able to communicate to guys, the leadership role that you have with the team, understanding like your competitive nature, like having just the commonality of things of wanting to win and have everybody's best interests at heart. I think the selfless nature of it definitely sticks out more than anything. You do things more for others than you do for yourself more in most cases. And I think that sticks out to guys who you've been around in locker rooms with.
When solid coaching, youth and experience, and talent finally work together, this year's Timberwolves team is the result. They're the best chance Minnesota has ever had to hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy as the champions of the basketball world. But if the build of this year's Minnesota team also looks familiar, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. They were specifically built to beat Connelly's former team. By the time he was hired by the Timberwolves to revive the franchise, Tim Connelly had already completed the challenge of building the Nuggets championship team. He was there during the very beginning of the process, long before his team raised championship gold. The only thing he didn't get to see was the title itself. For 9 seasons, from 2013 to 2021, Tim Connelly served as Denver's vice president of basketball operations and their GM. This meant he had nearly full control of all the decisions when it came to hiring coaches, drafting and signing players, and the overall vision of the team. One of Connelly's first big moves once he arrived in Denver came in 2014, when he drafted some kid from Serbia by the name of Nikola Jokic. The Joker became the centerpiece of the team, would one day win the NBA championship in 2023.
It's over. At last, the long wait is over. After 47 years, the Denver Nuggets can finally call themselves NBA champions.
Under Connelly's watch, Jokic blossomed into an NBA MVP and made 3 All-Star appearances. Along with the Serbian 7-footer, Connelly brought in athletic power forward Aaron Gordon and another big man in JaVale McGee. Connelly also brought in Mike Malone to coach the Nuggets in 2015 and help build the team culture. Connelly stayed in the Mile High City, guiding Malone and growing Denver's talented core of players until 2022, when Minnesota hired him to turn their team around. And just like that, the mad scientist ended up in Minneapolis. He took the lessons he learned in Denver and set out to bring a dead franchise back to life. It's alive. Those were Dr. Frankenstein's famous words, and that's probably what a few T-Wolves fans also said when their team started winning a lot under the mad scientist. Like we've said earlier in the video, when Connelly first arrived in Minnesota, the Wolves had lapsed back into playing some bad basketball. They had just suffered through their 17th losing season in 18 years. But that wasn't good enough for Connelly. Bad teams stay bad when they become okay with losing. He was bound and determined to make sure the culture didn't stay that way. The way Connelly began to change the culture in Minnesota started with turning the Wolves into a quality defensive team. They were incredibly talented and had a few pieces to compete with, such as Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. But in a run-and-gun league that has high-scoring games almost every night, the Wolves needed to clamp down defensively to start becoming a consistent winner. Connelly believed so much in that philosophy that he essentially sent 10 players to the Utah Jazz to snag Rudy Gobert. Many teams might carefully watch their draft capital. After all, if they make a major mistake, their franchise could be set back for years. But Tim Connelly guided the Timberwolves with a certain swag and attitude that now has them seriously chasing their first NBA title. He had a vision for his team and was fearless and aggressive in trying to accomplish it. During his first press conference when he was introduced in Minnesota, he famously said that he didn't want to mess up the Timberwolves. What he said struck everyone as strange at the time. After all, the Wolves hadn't been a consistently good basketball team in decades. How could he mess up a bad team and make it worse than it already was? But while everyone else was playing checkers, the mad scientist was playing chess. Tim Connelly knew he had inherited a bad basketball team with some good players on the roster. He knew he had nowhere to go but up. He just didn't want to mess up the vision he had for turning the Wolves into the alpha dogs of the NBA. So he quietly went to work, building around the players that he inherited, as well as the ones he traded for. Not only did Tim Connelly make the right roster moves, but he also built a sense of trust within the entire team. Everyone knew building a championship contender would take time. From owner Glenn Taylor to CEO Ethan Casson to all the players, everyone had to be patient. They had to trust the process and each other. In a recent interview with the Associated Press, Wolves star Karl-Anthony Towns said that trust from Tim Connelly has really helped the team to gel and believe in themselves. "I just appreciate him believing in himself and his talent and his mind, and building this team out for us to have the best chance to win, trusting that we would make this work," Towns said. And now that the Wolves have that trust from Connelly, they can simply focus on playing their best basketball. They're doing exactly that and peaking at the right time, and that's a nightmare for the rest of the NBA. Frankenstein's monster terrorized everyone who went against it. Tim Connelly's creation is doing the exact same thing. The Denver Nuggets just happened to be its latest victim. Like we said earlier in the video, Tim Connelly spent his time in Denver building the Nuggets in the same way he later built the Wolves. Both teams are centered around at least two big men, have a solid supporting cast of superstars and role players, and they play suffocating defense. And that's exactly how the Timberwolves knocked off the defending NBA champs. They stifled the Joker and company, and were monsters on the glass when it came time to snag rebounds. But not only was Minnesota extremely physical with Denver, they also showed they can dig themselves out of big holes too.
Shot clock at 5. Edwards makes the move, the bump, the backpedal, and the feed, and Reed is out there. In the corner, Conley 3. Good! Big time triple!
In Game 7 with the series on the line, the Nuggets looked like they were going to cruise to an easy win and punch their ticket to the conference finals. After all, they were up by as many as 20 points in the third quarter. Denver had also only lost 8 times at home all season. But unfortunately for the Nuggets, they forgot 2 big rules. You always defend home court, and you don't blow big leads in series-clinching games. Minnesota roared to life, outscoring Denver 60-37 in the second half.
Oh, there's a steal by Edwards. Here he comes, and there he goes.
They won Game 7 at Ball Arena by a final score of 98-90 and are set to make their first conference finals appearance since 2004. The last time they made it there, a young big man by the name of Kevin Garnett was leading the way. But this 2024 team isn't just talented. They're led by patient leadership, a veteran head coach in Chris Finch, have talented young stars like Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, and veterans like Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. What do you think? Will the Timberwolves finally break through and win their first ever NBA championship? Let me know down below.